Hi, my book review was on A Square Meal, A Culinary History of the Great Depression by Jane Ziegelman and Andrew Coe. This is the cover of it on my ebook on my phone. The book was published in 2016. I read this entire book cover to cover, every word on every page. The book talks about the culinary changes that took place a little bit before, but during and after the Great Depression. So it sort of goes and tells a sort of like a timeline and just how things change. It talks about how women had to learn to stretch their budgets, their food budgets, because food was scarce in the Great Depression, and we all have read about the Great Depression and all that, and learned about it in school, and so we know that the food was scarce. Families were having trouble feeding their families, and so that led women to having to stretch their food budgets. They had to make their own breads. Men would have to hunt for their food. It wasn't just like what we have now. And so this book kind of it takes from then, but it also includes sort of a timeline, not a timeline necessarily, but, well, sort of, of just how it changes over time and how it's more recent and how starting off, food was abundant before the Great Depression, and then it was scarce, and then over time people began leaving the farms and going to the big cities to find work, and when they going to the big cities and stuff, they weren't farming their crops and doing their own food anymore. And so over the course of time, of course, we know now we have processed foods and packaged foods, and we're very fast paced and fast food, and we want it now, and it just wasn't that way back then. And so I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed it, just kind of seeing how things have changed. I mean, you know, obviously from reading history that it's not the same as it was. But this kind of gives you a more detailed version of that and what they went through. I really liked it. Even included some recipes in there of like grape pie and even a yeast recipe, and it also included firsthand accounts of people who had memories of the Great Depression, or how they might have cooked, or sitting down at the table, and even so much as women who loved the farming. It gave their opinion of how they loved their farm. They loved their country lifestyle of being able to take care of the home and take care of the homestead, and how the home wasn't just the walls of the home. The home also included the garden and the orchard and all the animals, you know, and all the stuff that was included in the home. And but anyways, it talks about, you know, the men, how they went and they had to hunt, and it even goes into detail of how the government helped even feed the Americans for a while, because there wasn't enough food. There just wasn't enough food. And which, like I said, we've all discussed, we've all learned about this in school and about how there wasn't enough food. It's just this book was interesting in how it detailed that toward the food. I mean, we know the Depression was sad. We know the stock market and all that. We know all that, but this was detailed toward how the culinary part of it has just changed over time, and how even the farming has changed over time. Really, if back then people would farm, they would farm, you know, their animals. Their farms were diverse. They didn't just farm one thing. Whereas now, you know, people may only do a certain main crop. They may not do. They may just do corn, or they may just do beef, or they may just do something like that. Where back then they did everything, and so it's that's another way of not just the processed foods, but another way of how things have sort of shifted. And so I would recommend this book, especially to women or anybody that's interested in the Great Depression and the sequence of things as far as how the causes and stuff and how it turns out. My I will say, as a mom, I can, as a mother, I can't relate because I've not been in that situation, but as a mom, my heart would feel heavy having to worry about how am I going to feed my children? How am I going to feed my family, my husband? And so, women, I mean, the men went through a lot too, but because this is culinary and that was mainly the women's job then, it's got a lot to do with how the woman had to stretch that and even become inventive and think of different ways to do things in the kitchen and around the house. And so for my lesson plan, of course, because this is based on the Great Depression, or the book, not based on the Great Depression, but around the culinary arts of the Great Depression and thereafter, my lesson plan is going to be on the Great Depression. It's a 6th grade standard that I found, and my students will do a scavenger hunt and a poster project, and it will include the key events of the Depression. And in the scavenger hunt is where they will learn their information, and it will be through technology and websites and things like that. And they will have a worksheet that asks these questions, and they will scavenger hunt for those answers on specific websites. And then the poster project will be where they will show what they've learned. We'll hang those in the classroom, and but the poster project will be where they're able to create and show what they have learned. So anyway, thank you for listening.